Hi everybody, I'm Janie with the League-Kempner House, and today we are back in the basement with Ricardo and his crew to do some work necessary for the concrete guys to come in and do their work. So let's get in there and show you what's going on. It's an old story, you've heard it before, but I'm going to give everybody a quick refresher to those who have seen it and a little bit of a foundation for those of you that are new to our channel and don't know what's going on in there. If you are new, this is the League-Kempner House in Galveston. We're a nonprofit and we are restoring and preserving this incredible house. So let's get in the basement and see what's going on. I'm an hour late to the party and there's already been a lot of work going on. Juan is raising the level of our well. So you can see they've taken the metal top off of it. And we had already added 2 or 3 rows of brick previously when the floor was demolished. But now that we put the laser level on this, the new floor is going to come up to this row. So we need this to be higher. And you can see the water level, how high the water table is. So I pumped that out to the bottom yesterday, but it seeped back in. And I think this was set up to filter the water because it's really not a well. But we're going to turn it into a wishing well. Richard's busy mixing up the mortar. This is our temporary beam and it is very much in the way, or the posts that support it are in the way. If they were to pour the concrete slab with these posts in place and then we remove the post, obviously we'd have 2 big gaping holes in the concrete and we don't want that. So we have to do some work today. I have seen this beam come down before, so I know the floor above can be supported temporarily without it. But I'm nervous and Ricardo is nervous about people working down here and having an unsafe situation. So we are going to do some additional work to strengthen these floor joists before removing this beam. And as usual, almost immediately our plan has to be changed. Not sure if that's long enough. I was planning on going through 2, but because we had the problem with the potential for falling concrete, now we need to go through 3. So I'm not sure that's long enough. But they did not sell a 6-inch in galvanized at Home Depot. As long as we can get a nut on it and get it tightened. It'll definitely work where we have 2, but let's see about 3. In season 1, episode 16, about the bedroom disaster up on the 2nd floor, you saw us sistering in floor joist, basically adding another board up against the existing floor joist and bolting it together very tightly to strengthen that area that had been eaten by termites. And that's in effect what we're doing here. But we ran into another problem, and in some places, instead of bolting 2 boards together, we had to bolt 3, which needed a longer bolt, I thought, than the one I bought. It's also a problem with the length of the drill bit we had, so a little bit of finagling had to go on. Just enough. Okay, that's good. Alright. About 100 more of those to go. There really were a lot of these things to do. We were sistering either 11 or 12 joists. I can't remember now, and there were 10 of these bolts on each joist. So at 11 joists, that's 110 holes that he had to drill and bolts that he had to get in, and not all of them were very cooperative. Meanwhile, back at the well. So we have a little problem in that this is round, but we only have straight bricks. So what Juan is doing is chipping away the corner of each one so that it will sit more round. Originally, they built this well with curved bricks. We don't have any of those, so we're trying to make do. I went upstairs to do some work and left my camera down there to take some time lapse for you guys to see. And when I came back, I noticed this one area that I thought was pretty scary. This is where termites have eaten just one of the floorboards, and they're so funny in that they get in a board and will devour it and not touch the board on either side. And I think this is right below where the sink in the butler's pantry is. So my guess that there was a water leak and this just created a damp area and they took advantage of it. This was very slow work. Richard is over there with the grinder. You can see him working in the background. Before you can sister a new board up to these joists, it has to be very clean and flat. There can't be any old nails or anything sticking out, because for the physics to work, the boards have to be pressed very tightly together. So before they can put a new sister in, they have to clean everything completely and make sure the surface of the existing joist is very smooth and flat. And there is a lot of stuff nailed up in these joists over the years. A lot of these nails that they're having to clean up come from when we did the original joist repair down here. It was one of the very first things we ever did in the house. But if you remember, if you've been with us, the subfloor above was made by nailing boards on either side of the joist and then laying boards between it and pouring a layer of concrete over it. And we had to remove all of that to properly fix the joist. Here's that diagram I showed you in one of the earlier videos. You can see the floor joist that had these sideboards nailed to it and a board above. Then they poured concrete up to the level of the joist to create a flat surface. Once that cured, they came back and laid a second layer of concrete over the whole thing to make a smooth surface to put the tile. Remember, they didn't have hardy backer or cement board, any of the things we have today. I'm not sure why they didn't just lay a wooden subfloor and pour concrete over that. They had to have some logic to this. I just don't know what it is. But all of that had to be removed to do the first joist repair, and it's also causing some of the problems down here today that we're trying to resolve. If you look close at this picture, you can see on the right that that first layer of concrete fell out when we removed those sideboards and the support. On the left, that first layer of concrete stayed up. It was still stuck to that second layer of concrete they poured. And our concern is that with vibration and work down here, that first layer could fall off. Now, I don't think it will. When we did this work initially, we tried to get it all down. We even took the big jackhammer to the parts that didn't fall and hit it pretty hard trying to break it free, and they didn't. But you just never know. So in the areas where we don't have a sister joist, we're adding just 2x4s as a support on either side of this first layer of concrete to give it something to hold it up there in case it does break free. You can see here that that sister joist on the right is acting as that support, but on the left we've already got that additional 2x4 in place. I know. I know he said 5, so he's already got 5.
Yes.
But if the floor is going to be here,
Okay.
and it's going to be a wishing well, it should like come up to the waist. I
There.
think we need to go.
Dos pies.
2 feet.
Well, let's see. Okay, let me see. How high am I from the ground? So if it were waist high on somebody, it's 3 feet. So the ground is going to be here. So 2 more feet. So 2 more feet.
Then take.
Because I did put the laser level on it, and this is the finished
The finished
floor.
floor.
7 líneas, ¿no?
7.
So the finished floor will be here. So if I were standing here, if this were the finished floor, I'd want it about here.
That's 8 lines more.
So 8 lines more. I mean, if we have it was making me very nervous because visually it just seemed like that was going to be so tall because you can't see where the finished floor is going to be. We were actually maybe, I don't know, 8 to 10 inches below at this point where the finished floor would be. So I had to go get my laser level and just double check everything and make sure I was thinking about it right. I didn't want to go too high and have to tear a brick off. Since I had the laser level out to check that height of the well in there, I brought it in here because this has been bothering me. Visually, it looks pretty off to me. And so I put the laser, the vertical line that tells me if this is plumb, at the inside corner of this 2x4, and you can see it comes at quite an angle across to where it's touching the outside edge. So it's about 2 inches off at the top. It needs to be moved over. So there's, of course, 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5 or 6 nails up there. It will also affect this brace here. Will probably have to be turned sideways to do. But if it's visually off looking at it, it's going to be a main wall in the kitchen. It will annoy me to no end once we finish it out with the beadboard. So this will have to come down and be straightened up. Easy fix, but everything else I checked looks pretty good. So we need to get this done. Been upstairs doing other work. I came down to check progress and look, it's huge. And Ricardo has made it all the way down to the end. I'm getting the sister joist in there. And we have sort of a plan for this area. When we added the first few courses to this, years ago now, we didn't really care what the inside looked like. But now that I've decided to make this into a wishing well in the gift shop, people will be looking over the edge and down into the well. And the part they see, I would like to look a little nicer. So Juan has gone up as high as he needs to go, and he and Richard started cleaning up the brick, not just on the outside, but on the inside too, to make it look a little bit nicer. Like a lot of projects, everything's going well, and then we get to the very last board, and the bolts just did not want to go through. I don't know if the board slipped a little bit and it was slightly misaligned, but they tried everything. They tried the sledgehammer. Everybody took turns wiggling the board, tapping on this thing, and there's just not a lot of room in between the floor joists to work because we've added additional boards on either side, so it's a very tight space. Ricardo even got his little jackhammer thing out to see if he could vibrate the bolt through, and that didn't work. But with a lot of tapping, eventually it went in, and the very last sister joist was up, and then it was time to start thinking about how to actually get that temporary beam down. Getting that beam out is not simple. Remember, the entire weight of this house is forced down on that beam, so it is in there very tight. Those posts are sitting on the wall of the cistern, so there is no give at all in this thing. So what they're going to have to do is set new posts, use the hydraulic jacks that they use to lift the house up in the first place, jack this floor up a little bit, and then get this beam out. So it took a lot of time and thought and preparation and scrounging around the house to find all of the right posts and things that we needed to get this work done. This is not a simple task. First of all these things are very heavy. These are 4x4, no, I'm sorry, these are 6x6 posts. They're 6x6 or 6x8 beams, and they're long, and then the hydraulic jacks themselves weigh probably 25 to 30 pounds. So all these posts have to be set exactly vertical, and then they have to lift that jack up on top of it, get it shimmed up, get the beam above that, and once they do that and jack it up, they've got to get down that same weight of beam that's already up there. So, and they're working overhead. It's very impressive. If you watch them do it, they know what they're doing. They do it with what seems to be ease, but it is very physically demanding. This was a relatively long process. It took maybe 35-40 minutes or more to get everything set up exactly the way Ricardo wanted it. And again, there's, a skill involved in this. These guys know what they're doing. They do this all the time. It seems to be second nature to them. But Ricardo is very careful, and he does take that time to make sure everything is exactly the way he wants it before they start jacking things up. But once it was in place, then they had 2 posts, a beam across, and 2 jacks set. Ricardo and Richard worked the jacks, and Juan took the sledgehammer and started whacking at the post. And they continued to do this kind of click by click by click. They didn't want to jack this floor up any higher than necessary because the floor is level, and the higher you jack it, it's actually pushing that beam up and putting pressure on the tile floor above. So we don't want to go any higher than necessary. So it was a slow process, and he just continued to hit and hit and hit until eventually they got to the point where the beam would come out. This was a little nerve-wracking for everybody. I knew the floor would hold. I've seen it before without this temporary beam in place, and we've done a lot of additional work to strengthen the joists that are there. But still, this is a big, heavy house, and it was something to see in person. It just doesn't really come across in the video. With the first post out and that section of beam down, everything had to shift down to the other post and beam, and the process just repeated itself. This one was a little more nerve-wracking because this section is actually holding up a larger span of the floor right underneath the kitchen, and this is the area that we've been most concerned about being shored up. So we had practice with that first section. It was not as significant as this next section was going to be. And at this point, once we got everything set up, I decided to go live because this was, in our vernacular, kind of the big ta-da moment of this whole process. So I'm going to switch over and insert that live clip here so you guys that didn't get to see it in real time can see exactly what was going on. We are taking down the beam in the basement. It's a big day. It's in there so tight, we're having to jack the house up to get the weight off the temporary beam. And I'm just out of the way. Oh, there it goes, there it goes. Okay. There's a lot going on, and the whole floor just moved. There was a big shudder from the house. I don't know if you could hear it or see it on the screen. I've had to watch this video several times because of the editing process, and I can tell you it just does not do justice to what was going on here. It was such an eerie feeling to hear that whole house groan and creak and shift when this beam came down. I cannot imagine how much weight was on that beam. Now it's holding and it's strong, it's fine down here, but it just made me feel like we need a load-bearing beam back in place for the long term. Ricardo and I could both see a slight sag to these joists, and we're going to have traffic and events above, and we'll get into a whole nerdy thing about joist and deflection and all the things you do to correct for that. Deflection is just a fancy word for sag or a spongy floor, but it's going to change the plan for the concrete down here. So I'm going to have to do some thinking, and I have to do it quick because this was done on, I can't remember now, either a Thursday or a Friday, and the concrete guys are coming on Monday to start preparing to lay the floor, and there's going to have to be some additional structural work, not just a slab poured because of this beam situation. But we'll get into all that later on. But for today, these guys did what they needed to do. It's clear down here, and we had to move down and repeat again for that last little section of beam, but it's not carrying the weight that this center span did. There were just a few more places that Ricardo had to go back and add some additional bracing to keep that concrete subfloor from potentially falling. So while he did that, everybody else started picking up tools and loading up the van. It had been a very long day for these guys, and I can't say enough about the work ethic of Ricardo and his team. They work from 8 to 5 as hard as they can. They refuse to take a break. They take a 1-hour lunch break, but the rest of the time they are working. So a big thank you to them. I just don't know where this house would be without this crew. Okay, that wraps up another very, very busy day with Ricardo and crew. I'm back in this little area to get out of the wind. It was a glorious day, but it was nippy, and I have been freezing all day long. I'm ready to get home and get in a warm bath, and I'm sure these guys are too. They worked hard all day, but getting that ceiling fixed, those floor joists fixed, was important to be able to get that beam down and be able to pour concrete on Monday. So that's our goal. But we did uncover some problems when we took that beam out. Ricardo and I both think there's a little bit of sag in the floor. So I'm going to have to talk to the concrete guy on Monday, have a little bit of change of scope, and have him not just do a slab, but do a 2-foot beam for me down where we're putting the partition wall in the basement for the apartment. So a partition wall normally doesn't carry any load, but we're actually going to make that wall carry a little bit of load and try to jack that floor back up to get that sag out. So we need something more than just the 4-inch slab there. So that's how these old projects go. You do one thing, you find something else, or you create another problem, and we just have to solve those problems as we go. So that's something to address with the concrete guy. It'll change the scope, it'll change the price, but hopefully not too much given the work that they're doing down there. So we will be back hopefully with concrete work in the next video. Until then, thanks for watching. I'm Janie with the League-Kempner House here in Galveston, Texas. We're a nonprofit set up to restore and preserve this incredible house. You can go to our website and make a donation, sign up to be a volunteer, just find information about the house and events, and just watching our YouTube and hanging with us till the end of the video helps us too. We earn a little money off of that. So thanks to everyone, and we will see you here next time.